Welcome to the world of science fiction. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The neon-lit corridors of Zone 15 buzzed with life as Jared Walker navigated its labyrinthine alleys. The space station reeked of desperation, cheap synthetic alcohol, burnt-out circuits, and broken dreams. He adjusted his worn jacket, feeling the comforting hum of the artifact hidden in his pocket. It had been years since he left behind his life as a weapons engineer, but old habits died hard. Tonight wasn't about survival, it was about doing something that mattered. Jared entered the auction house through a side entrance, his stolen ticket granting him access to one of the most exclusive, and illegal, events in this sector. The venue was an abandoned cargo bay converted into an arena. Tiered seating surrounded the central stage, where wealthy patrons from across the galaxy gathered to bid on merchandise. He found a seat near the back, close to an emergency hatch he'd already marked as an escape route. His eyes scanned the crowd, plutonic aristocrats in shimmering robes, hive-mind androids encased in luxury shells, and mercenaries flaunting scars like trophies. All here for one reason, to buy power. "Ladies and gentlemen," boomed a voice over the speakers, "tonight's special lot is something truly extraordinary." A cylindrical force field rose from the center of the stage, revealing its captive, a woman unlike any Jared had ever seen. Her emerald-green skin shimmered under the harsh lights, and her silver eyes blazed with defiance despite the energy-dampening shackles on her wrists and ankles. Her long silver hair cascaded like liquid moonlight down her back. "Behold," continued the announcer with theatrical flair, "a specimen from the lost ether ion system. Capable of manipulating pure energy when unbound, a living weapon. Fully trained in combat arts, and more." The crowd erupted into murmurs of intrigue and desire. Jared clenched his fists under the table. He'd heard rumors about ether ions, being so rare they were considered myths, but seeing one enslaved like this made his blood boil. He wasn't here for profit or curiosity, he was here because no one deserved this fate. "The bidding starts at 100,000 credits, announced the auctioneer. 200,000, shouted a fat merchant adorned with gaudy jewelry. 300, countered an android with a voice like grinding metal. As bids escalated into millions, Jared's mind raced. The artifact in his pocket pulsed against his skin as if urging him forward. It wasn't just a tool, it was alive in its own way, enhancing everything he touched. He'd used it before to dismantle security systems and sabotage corporate facilities. Tonight, it would help him save her. When the bids reached their peak, a staggering 5 million credits, Jared made his move. A small device hidden in the ventilation system detonated, flooding the room with dense purple smoke. Chaos erupted as alarms blared and patrons scrambled for safety. Jared slipped through the confusion like a shadow, reaching the stage where guards were already moving to secure their prize. The artifact guided his hands as he disabled their weapons with precision strikes. He reached her side just as she turned those piercing silver eyes on him. "Hold still," he muttered, pulling out a modified tool from his jacket. "Why?" she whispered warily. "Because some things shouldn't be for sale." The lock on her shackles gave way with a satisfying click. For a moment, she simply stared at him, confusion warring with curiosity in her gaze. "Run," he said. Instead of fleeing alone, she surprised him by stepping closer. "Where?" "With me," he replied without hesitation. They sprinted through smoke-filled corridors as shouts echoed behind them. She moved gracefully despite her long confinement, her every step calculated yet fluid. "What do you want from me?" she asked between breaths. "Right now." "To get out alive," he replied grimly. They rounded a corner only to come face to face with one of their pursuers, a hulking warrior clad in battle-worn armor. "She belongs to me," roared the warrior. Jared didn't hesitate. Tossing another device toward their enemy, he grabbed her hand and ran as it exploded behind them in a flash of light and sound. By the time they reached his ship, a retrofitted cargo hauler docked in Zone 15's lower levels, the alarms had faded into silence. As they boarded, she turned to him once more. "I still don't trust you," she said softly. "Good," he replied with a faint smile. "Trust should be earned." For now, they were safe, but both knew this was only the beginning of their journey together. The ship hummed quietly as it drifted through the void, its retrofitted engines purring like a contented beast. Jared leaned back in the pilot's chair, his fingers brushing against the worn edges of the console. The adrenaline from their escape had begun to wear off, leaving behind the familiar ache of exhaustion. He glanced over his shoulder at SAA, who stood near the viewport, her silver eyes fixed on the swirling stars outside. She hadn't spoken much since they left Zone 15. Jared couldn't blame her. Freedom was a concept that took time to sink in, especially for someone who had spent her life as property. "You can sit, you know," he said, breaking the silence. SAA turned her gaze to him, her expression unreadable. "I prefer to stand." "Suit yourself." Jared shrugged and returned his attention to the controls. "We'll reach the safe house in a few hours. It's not much, but it's hidden." "Why do you have safe houses?" she asked after a long pause. "Because people like me don't stay alive without them," he replied. "When you've spent years making enemies, you learn to keep an exit plan handy." Her silver eyes narrowed slightly. "And what kind of enemies does a man like you make?" Jared hesitated, his fingers hovering over the console. "The kind who don't like it when you stop building weapons for them." SAA tilted her head, studying him intently. "You built weapons?" "Used to," he admitted. "For corporations, governments, anyone with enough credits to pay. I thought I was making a difference. Turns out I was just making things worse." "And now?" she pressed. "Now I try to undo some of the damage." He met her gaze briefly before returning to his work. "Starting with you." SAA didn't respond immediately. Instead, she turned back to the viewport, her emerald skin catching the faint glow of starlight. Jared could only imagine what was going through her mind. The safe house was located on an abandoned asteroid, a hollowed-out rock with just enough atmosphere and gravity to sustain life. Jared had chosen it for its isolation and its lack of strategic value to anyone else. As they stepped off the ship and into the cavernous space, SAA's gaze swept over their surroundings. The safe house was little more than a workshop filled with salvaged tech and half-finished projects. Tools were scattered across workbenches, and shelves were lined with spare parts and outdated equipment. "It's functional," she said finally. "High praise," Jared replied dryly as he powered up the lights. "Make yourself at home." SAA hesitated near one of the workbenches, her fingers brushing against a piece of machinery. "What is this place?" "Just one of many," Jared said as he set down his bag and began unpacking supplies. "I don't stay in one place for long. And yet you brought me here." He glanced at her, noting the guarded tone in her voice. "Because it's safe, for now." Before she could respond, a voice crackled through the comm system on Jared's wristband. "Walker," said a gruff voice. "You alive?" Jared sighed and tapped the device. "Nice to hear from you too, Tarek." The holographic image of a grizzled man appeared above the comm unit. Tarek was an ex-soldier with a cybernetic arm and a permanent scowl etched into his weathered face. "You're late," Tarek growled. "Had a bit of trouble on Zone 15, Jared replied casually. Tarek's sharp eyes shifted to SAA, who stood silently behind Jared. His scowl deepened. "Is that what I think it is?" "She has a name," Jared said firmly. Tarek snorted. "You're playing a dangerous game, Walker. Do you have any idea how many people are looking for her?" "I have some idea," Jared said dryly. "Well, let me spell it out for you," Tarek continued. "There's a bounty on her head big enough to buy your own planet, and every bounty hunter in this sector knows it." SAA stepped forward then, her silver eyes locked onto Tarek's hologram. Let them come. Tarek raised an eyebrow but said nothing. We'll be fine, Jared said quickly before Tarek could argue further. Just get us those supplies we talked about. Tarek muttered something under his breath but nodded reluctantly. Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. The hologram flickered out, leaving them in silence once more. Later that evening, as Jared worked on repairing one of his drones, SAA approached him cautiously. Who is he? She asked. Tarek. Jared didn't look up from his work. An old friend, or as close as I get to having friends these days. He doesn't trust me, SAA said matter-of-factly. He doesn't trust anyone, Jared replied with a shrug. She studied him for a moment before speaking again. Why do you trust him? Jared set down his tools and met her gaze. Because he saved my life once, and because he hasn't tried to kill me since. SAA seemed to consider this before nodding slightly. Their conversation was interrupted by an alert from the ship's sensors. Jared frowned and moved quickly to check the display. What is it? SAA asked, sensing his tension. We've got company, he said grimly. The screen showed an approaching ship, a sleek black vessel that screamed trouble. Bounty hunters? SAA guessed. Looks like it. Jared grabbed his weapon and turned to her. Stay here. No, her voice was firm as she stepped closer to him. I'm not hiding while someone else fights my battles. Jared hesitated but saw the determination in her silver eyes, the same fire that had drawn him to her in the first place. Fine, he said reluctantly. But stay close. The bounty hunter's ship docked with surprising precision for someone intent on capturing them, or worse. As soon as the airlock hissed open, Jared and SAA were greeted by a tall woman clad in sleek armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Captain Aaron, Jared muttered under his breath. You know her? SAA asked quietly. We've crossed paths before, he replied grimly. Aaron stepped forward, her helmet retracting to reveal sharp features framed by short black hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through them both. Walker, she said coolly. You've been busy. What can I say? I like keeping things interesting, he replied with forced nonchalance. Her gaze shifted to SAA, and a faint smile played at her lips. So this is what all the fuss is about. She's not going anywhere with you, Jared said firmly. Aaron raised an eyebrow but didn't seem surprised by his defiance. You always did have a soft spot for lost causes. Before Jared could respond, SAA stepped forward boldly. Energy crackled faintly around her hands as she met Aaron's gaze head-on. I am not a cause, she said evenly. And I am not lost. For a moment, Aaron looked genuinely intrigued, but then she drew her weapon with lightning speed, aiming it directly at SAA. Jared moved instinctively, placing himself between them just as SAA unleashed a burst of energy that sent Aaron flying backward into the wall. The bounty hunter recovered quickly, but instead of retaliating immediately, she laughed, a low, dangerous sound that sent chills down Jared's spine. This just got interesting, Aaron said with a predatory grin as she raised her weapon again. Jared tightened his grip on his own weapon while glancing at SAA out of the corner of his eye. You still want to fight your own battles? He asked wryly. SAA didn't hesitate this time, her silver eyes blazing with determination as she nodded once. Together, they faced their enemy head-on, two fugitives bound by circumstance but united by something far stronger, the will to survive and reclaim their freedom at any cost. The hum of the ship's engines filled the silence as Jared punched in the coordinates for Orbis Prime. SAA sat beside him, her silver eyes reflecting the swirling nebulae outside the viewport. He glanced at her, she seemed lost in thought. Orbis Prime is a gamble, Jared said, breaking the silence. It's a major hub, but it's also crawling with corporate security. We have few options, SAA replied, her voice soft. Your friend. Tarek said the bounty hunters are already searching for us. He has a point. Jared sighed. But I know a guy on Orbis. Kale. He runs an underground resistance movement. If anyone can help us disappear, it's him. SAA raised an eyebrow. Resistance? Against whom? Against the corporations that control the planet, Jared explained. They exploit the resources, pollute the environment, and enslave anyone who stands in their way. Sounds familiar, SAA murmured. Jared hesitated, unsure if he should pry further into her past. I know it's not much, but it's a start. SAA turned her gaze back to the viewport. Freedom is a start. Orbis Prime was a sprawling industrial cityscape, a chaotic blend of towering skyscrapers, grimy factories, and neon-lit alleys. The air was thick with pollution, and the streets teemed with desperate souls trying to scrape by. Jared navigated the ship through the crowded airspace, dodging automated cargo drones and security patrol vessels. He eventually found a landing pad in the lower levels, a dilapidated platform hidden beneath a crumbling warehouse. Welcome to paradise, he said dryly as they disembarked. SAA's silver eyes scanned their surroundings, taking in the gritty reality of Orbis Prime. It is different. Just keep your head down, Jared warned. We don't want to attract any unwanted attention. He led her through the labyrinthine streets, past makeshift markets and gambling dens, until they reached a nondescript door hidden behind a stack of discarded machinery. Jared knocked 3 times, followed by a short pause, then twice more. The door slid open, revealing a dimly lit corridor lined with makeshift barricades and surveillance equipment. A woman with close-cropped hair and a stern expression stood guard, holding a plasma rifle. State your business, she said, her voice cold. I'm looking for Kale, Jared replied. Tell him Walker sent me. The woman eyed them suspiciously but nodded curtly and gestured for them to enter. She led them down the corridor, past armed guards and makeshift living quarters, until they reached a steel door at the end of the hall. Wait here, she said, then disappeared inside. A few moments later, the door opened again, and a man with piercing blue eyes and a wiry frame emerged. He studied Jared and SAA intently before speaking. Walker, he said, his voice cautious. It's been a while. Kale, Jared replied with a nod. Thanks for seeing us. Kale's gaze shifted to SAA, and his expression hardened. Who is she? Her name is SAA, Jared said. She's complicated. Kale raised an eyebrow. Complicated how? Let's just say she needs a place to lay low for a while, Jared said. And I need your help. Kale hesitated, then sighed and gestured for them to enter. Come in. The room was small and sparsely furnished, a table, a few chairs, and a holographic display screen dominated the space. Kale took a seat behind the table, while Jared and SAA remained standing. So, Kale said, tell me everything. Jared recounted their escape from Zone 15, the bounty on SAA's head, and the relentless pursuit of Captain Aaron. Kale listened intently, his expression growing more grim with each passing detail. You've brought trouble to my doorstep, Walker, Kale said finally. I know, Jared admitted. But I wouldn't have come if I didn't think you could handle it. Kale leaned back in his chair, considering their situation. Why should I help you? What's in it for the resistance? SAA, Jared said simply. She has abilities that could be invaluable to your cause. Kale's eyes narrowed. What kind of abilities? Jared glanced at SAA, giving her a silent cue. She stepped forward and extended her hand, and a faint aura of emerald energy enveloped the room. Kale stared in disbelief. Aetheron. I've heard the legends. She's the real deal, Jared confirmed. Kale remained silent for a moment, weighing his options. All right, he said finally. I'll help you. But it comes at a price. What price? Jared asked cautiously. SAA will assist us in a mission, Kale replied. A mission that could cripple the corporation's operations on this planet. Jared hesitated, looking at SAA for her reaction. She met his gaze and nodded slightly. We're listening, Jared said. Kale leaned forward and activated the holographic display screen, revealing a complex schematic of a massive industrial facility. This is the Kronos Corporation's main energy plant, Kale explained. They use it to power their factories, their security systems, everything. We believe sabotaging this facility could give us a significant advantage. What do you want us to do? Jared asked. Infiltrate the facility and disable the primary reactor, Kale said. It's heavily guarded, but with SAA's abilities, we might have a chance. Jared studied the schematic, assessing the risks. It was a suicide mission, but it was also an opportunity to strike a blow against the corporations. We'll do it, Jared said finally. Kale nodded in approval. Good. Zinra will provide you with the necessary information and equipment. Zinra was a mysterious hacker with a network of contacts that spanned the entire planet. She worked from a hidden room in the Resistance headquarters, surrounded by computers and encrypted communication devices. As Jared and SA entered her domain, Zinra didn't even bother to look up from her console. Kale said you need my help, she muttered. That's right, Jared replied. We need access codes, security layouts, anything that can help us infiltrate the Kronos facility. Zinra sighed and swiveled her chair around to face them. She was young, with bright, intelligent eyes and a cascade of purple hair. You know this is a death sentence, right? She said. We're aware of the risks, Jared replied. Zinra shrugged and turned back to her console. Fine. But don't say I didn't warn you. She began typing rapidly, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Within minutes, she had downloaded a wealth of information onto a data chip. Here, she said, handing the chip to Jared. Everything you need to know about the facility's security protocols, access points, and weak spots. But be warned, they're constantly updating their systems. We'll keep that in mind, Jared said. One more thing, Zinra added, her voice suddenly serious. I've heard whispers, rumors about SAA's origins. About the experiments that created her. SAA's silver eyes widened slightly, but she remained silent. What kind of rumors? Jared asked cautiously. That she's not just a weapon, Zinra said. That she's something more. Something the corporations are desperate to control. What do you mean? Jared pressed. I don't know the details, Zinra admitted. But I suggest you be careful. There are forces at play here that you can't even imagine. With that cryptic warning, Zinra turned back to her console, effectively ending the conversation. Jared and SAA exchanged uneasy glances as they left her domain. As they prepared for the mission, Jared couldn't shake Zinra's words from his mind. He knew SAA was special, he had seen her powers firsthand, but he didn't realize the depth of her significance. Are you all right? SAA asked, sensing his unease. Just thinking, Jared replied. About what Zinra said. About my past? SAA asked softly. Jared nodded. Do you know anything about these experiments? SAA hesitated, her expression troubled. I remember, fragments. Flashes of light, pain, voices, but nothing concrete. It's all right, Jared said gently. You don't have to tell me anything you don't want to. SAA looked at him, her silver eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Jared. For everything. We're in this together, he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. As they set off on their mission, Jared couldn't help but wonder what the future held for them, and what secrets SAA's past would ultimately reveal.